My name is Torbjørn Rødland. I have a show called The Touch That Made You at the Serpentine Sackler Gallery. It's, I think, a popular idea that photography is sterile as a medium, while something like ceramics or painting is much more about touch. But for me, there is a lot of tactility and touch in a photograph, both that I think that a photograph renders surfaces and textures really well, and also the process actually has a lot of subtle touches. I'm trying to push my photography towards something more psychological and something more spiritual, something more erotic. I've always been drawn to the idea of opposites coming together. In the newest piece in the exhibition called Candles and Cubes, it's the old pairing of fire and ice in a more contemporary setting with ice cubes and birthday candles. Also, when I work with more than one person in the frame, they also tend to be more asymmetrical couples that are different from each other, either in ethnicity or height or in age. As a photographer, there is always a relation to all the other photographic images that communicate to us on a day-to-day basis. And the modern relation is more like a rejection, saying we are artists, we don't really deal with this type of popular imagery. And the postmodern take was more to criticize, to hold up, to show how ridiculous this iconography is. And that was really influential to me. Starting out, I more represent the third way, which is to try to go into these motifs and this aesthetic, because it's sort of the only iconography we have. So try to get in there, get dirty, look for gold, try to deepen that format rather than rejecting it or criticizing it. In the show, there are a lot of what you could call portraits and what you could call object photographs or sometimes still lifes. I like to think of them as being in between very often, so it's in between subject and object. And it's this in between state that's interesting. The person in the portraits is maybe less important than what the image can represent. So the model is there to model something bigger than themselves, something more general, which also gives more room for the viewer to activate their own inner selves, but also their inner catalog of photographic memories and so on. And for the objects, I'm looking to almost like give them life, to look for life in these dead old objects or these dead old tropes sometimes. I think there is an openness in the images to individual reactions, and I like the photographs to read the viewer while the viewer is reading the work. They are positioned maybe a little bit lower on the wall than a regular museum hang. It addresses your body, not just the head, basically. So this photograph I made in New York as a reaction to the 2004 re-election of George W. Bush. It's one of the few photographs I made that is based on a dream. I dreamt that I walked into an exhibition space and on view were photographic still lifes of the favorite foods of different world leaders. Waking up, I was wondering, half asleep, if this had been made. And then when I realized it probably hadn't, then I said, okay, I'm doing it. And then I got into Bush and realized all these other things that he had named as his favorites. So the Mexican food is represented in this photograph with the nacho chips, but also it includes his favorite movie, favorite children's book, favorite drink, and favorite ice cream flavor. It wasn't meant as a political critique, but this is more one layer in the reading. But I also, of course, wanted to function as a still life that can address the viewer in a more open way. So seeing the portraits in the show, it's clear that I tend to throw things at faces or push them or squeeze them or violate them. Some people see that as a violation of an individual. I see it more as a violation of a portrait genre, or trying to shake it, trying to make it come alive, trying to make it say something. This photograph, Summer Scene, is an example of that, of sort of putting the pressure on both to do a more psychologically interesting portrait, hopefully, but also to put the pressure on the portrait tradition and try to do something new within it.